I'm Soledad O'Brien. Welcome to Matter of Fact from New York City. Republican Senator Jeff Flake of Arizona, a vocal critic of President Trump, is going to sit out the next election. Why? In a blistering speech on the Senate floor, he blamed the contentious tenor of politics.
If I have been critical, it is because I believe it is my obligation to do so, and as a matter and duty of conscience.
Flake joins fellow Republican Senator Bob Corker of Tennessee in his decision to abandon a re-election bid, all as incumbent Republicans find themselves on the political hit list of former White House chief strategist Steve Bannon. Within the GOP ranks, Bannon's pledge that no one is safe is being taken seriously. Joshua Green spent hours interviewing Steve Bannon over the last 6 years. The result, a book called The Devil's Bargain. Nice to have you. I'm trying to decide, so who's the devil in The Devil's Bargain?
Well, it's sort of a choose-your-own-adventure novel. You can pick either one. But the idea, basically, is that Bannon came up with these ideas that he thought could get someone elected. And Trump took them up, got elected. But the problem was that as soon as Trump and Bannon got into the White House, they didn't really know what they were doing. Trump brought in all sorts of people he campaigned against. Wall Street bankers, people like Gary Cohn and Stephen Mnuchin from Goldman Sachs, people like Reince Priebus and Sean Spicer, members of the Swamp and the Republican establishment, and almost immediately you had the White House break out into open warfare, which inhibited anything from getting done. His
new strategy of backing candidates, and sounds to me like he's just trying to blow the established candidates out of the water.
I think that's exactly right. And the reason for that is, I think that the big challenge that Donald Trump and Steve Bannon have is to essentially explain away the failures of the Trump presidency to accomplish what it was they said they were going to do. And in order to explain that away, you need a bad guy. Well, the bad guy can't be Trump. Hillary Clinton is no longer on the scene, although Republicans are constantly trying to pull her in. So the bad guys, Bannon has decided and Trump has decided, are the Republican establishment. And the line that Bannon sells, and I'm not sure this is wrong, is that essentially Republicans have never accepted Donald Trump as their president. They are seditious. They're working behind the scenes to undermine his agenda. We've seen public confirmation of that in the outspoken criticism from Republicans like John McCain or Senator Bob Corker, or just this past week, Senator Jeff Flake. So I think there is a real sentiment that mainstream Republicans don't like what Trump is doing, and Bannon is using that to point to them and say, we need to destroy this Republican establishment, replace them with people who are loyal to Trump.
How about a Mitch McConnell?
McConnell has become the new bad guy in the Trump-Bannon universe. We've seen Trump criticize him publicly, and the one litmus test that Steve Bannon has for the slate of insurgent candidates he's running is, will you promise to vote against Mitch McConnell as majority leader? Well, as a consequence of this, McConnell, who is previously a very popular and quite effective Republican leader, has gone from a 70% approval rating among Republican voters to 13%. So it is clear that the Trump-Bannon message that Mitch McConnell and his allies are to blame, is resonating and being believed by ordinary rank-and-file voters, and that is going to make it much harder for Mitch McConnell to do his job.
How successful do you think Steve Bannon can be? I mean, clearly the GOP is afraid of him.
Absolutely, the Republican Party is afraid of him, particularly political Washington. Bannon's idea was that too many of these incumbent Republicans are insufficiently loyal to Trump, and so he is going to get a slate of candidates and he's going to go after them personally and directly. It would put the fear of God in mainstream Republicans to toe the Trump line or risk being ousted. I think Bannon's threat is so powerful that it doesn't even require running candidates against the incumbents. They're just giving up.
Do you like Steve Bannon? I mean, you've talked to him a lot, probably more than any other journalist.
As a journalist and an author, he is my favorite character because he is so consequential and so interesting and so multi-dimensional. You don't often get that in journalism. And Bannon, from the first time I met him in 2011, has been this kind of, charismatic, disheveled, wild-eyed bomb thrower who happens to have some very interesting ideas, and ideas that it was clear even back then were going to have agency and salience with Republican voters, because even back then, during the Tea Party uprising, you could see this strain of populist anger bubbling up on the right. And Bannon has always been at the vanguard of that movement.
Thank you so much, Josh Green. Appreciate it.
Thank you. It's great to be here.